What's going on, fellow A-plussers? It's your boy Adam Perez back once again with a brand new episode review for you guys as we're set to go ahead and get into episode number 5 of Ahsoka this season, ladies and gentlemen. Look, I feel like I come back here each and every week and I say, this was the best episode of the season. I feel like I did that for episode 3. I did that for episode 4. I'm doing it again for episode 5, man. This one really certainly did blow me away. Dave Filoni really got into his bag this time and gave us a stellar episode, if you ask me. I definitely have maybe one or two cons here, but for the most part, this episode really floored me, honestly. You know, I've been seeing some people talk about the idea of this maybe being a little fan servicey. You know, I personally don't feel that way. I kind of feel like, if anything, this is probably something that he's planned to do for quite some time. And if anything, I feel like he's probably just giving the fans what they've already wanted a long time ago. But I do think that this has definitely been in Dave Filoni's bag for quite some time to really give us a live action version of the Clone Wars here in this episode. It honestly floored me. I didn't think that he was going to pull the trigger on it or actually pull it off, but he definitely did as we wind up getting ourselves a returning Hayden Christensen, which was definitely teased in last week's episode, but we got to see him in all his glory. Look, two things. I love a returning Hayden Christensen in here as Anakin Skywalker. I think he probably delivered one of his much better performances as Anakin Skywalker for sure. But I love the fact that he's back. You know, for me, somebody that went to Star Wars Celebration in Chicago a few years ago, there's a part of me that wants to say it was, I don't know if that was the year it was celebrating the Phantom Menace going like 20 years old or whatever the case may be. But, you know, they wind up bringing back a ton of people. I think Ahmed Best was there and Hayden Christensen was there. And I remember him, or at least Ahmed Best was there. And I remember him coming out to a standing ovation. And I just kept thinking to myself, like, man, it would be just so great if some of the other prequel stars certainly came back. And the fact of Hayden Christensen being back in the Star Wars fold once again. You know, I missed the Star Wars celebration in which he was in attendance, but I honestly wish I had gotten the opportunity to check it out just because of the fact that you know, time heals all wounds. You know, it's been such a long time since the prequels. And for those of you who have been around since the prequels or when the prequels dropped, people shit on that trilogy for years until people eventually started coming around and understanding just some of the greatness that was definitely in those films and just the stories, if anything, that I think it launched for a lot of our characters. And for me, I was always a big fan of Hayden Christensen, and I was so glad to see that he's back, that people are, you know, welcoming him in with open arms, and he's just definitely been delivering. So I'm glad that for the most part that fans have definitely warmed up to him once again. And so if anything, I'm actually not going to be doing this review and breakdown alone. I did have a last minute acquaintance wind up wanting to hop on in here. Let me see if, are you ready to go? Here we go. Let me go ahead and introduce you guys to good old Will Polk
Hey,
from Scene-N-Nerd. What's going on, man? How you doing?
what's going on, man? Doing well, doing well. How are you? Hear me okay?
Yeah, I hear you perfectly, man.
Okay, good. Yeah, I was like,
Everything looks good.
okay, good.
If anything, at the end of the show, I'll put a link in the description box below. If people want to go ahead and check out Scene-N-Nerd, feel free to go ahead and do so. They have a podcast. You can catch them on audio versions if you'd like to, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, probably wherever you get your podcasts from. And then they also have a website. I'll go ahead and put that in the description box below. I know you and Sarah got the opportunity to
Yeah,
review Ahsoka the other day. Before I get into my rant and rave about it, what did you think about it overall?
yeah. So for me, this was by far my favorite episode of the series to date. I say the to date because we still have 3 left, but and whenever we talked about it, our shows up now. But I think for me, this episode really brought it all together,
Mm,
and it was a reward for fans of Clone Wars, Rebels, and also even for live action folks. I think it did a good job of expanding that universe for them. But it really was for animated folks who watched those two series, it was like Filoni was like, "Thank you. I'm going to give you what you want," but also it really Hayden Christensen was given material, blended his version of Anakin plus Matt Lanter's version from the other series that it gave him the opportunity to really showcase his acting skills and really showcase a 360 Anakin. And I know we'll probably get into some, clearly whenever we see him physically, of course he appears as he did at the beginning of Revenge of the Sith, given that it was in the world between worlds, was it, is it the Anakin that has all the lessons that we've learned, and is he, part of the cosmic and living force, and and all those kind of things. But love this show. This episode was the best. Filoni had to be the one to direct it. It couldn't be anybody else. But those are my just quick thoughts on the episode.
Yeah, no, I totally agree with you. This definitely felt very much full circle, not just for the animated series, but definitely for Dave Filoni. I mean, he's been building up to this moment for years. I think the idea of him finally being able to bring Ahsoka to live action is probably something he never imagined when doing this at first for the animated Clone Wars. But here we are. He's getting the opportunity to not only sort of teach a final lesson, if you will, to his pupil that he created in Ahsoka from Anakin Skywalker from the trilogies and stuff. So to be able to bring those animated series together and the movies together like that, I thought he did it absolutely beautifully. And I totally agree with you too, in the sense that if there was anybody that was going to direct this episode, it certainly was him. I did have my issues with some of his directing in episode 1, but looking at this episode, I think he did a marvelous job when it comes to directing, really able to get a lot of the best performances out of his actors as he possibly could. And I think just the idea of him working in animation allows him to just have this vision of what he wants to see on screen so beautifully well. And the fact that we've gotten some beautiful cinematography and just some incredible shots, I thought really put this episode certainly over the top. But for me, again, I'm just really happy Hayden Christensen got to come back, not just for this, but him coming back. They really have utilized him perfectly, if you ask me. I mean, they really have been able to bring him on so many other projects that I think a lot of us fans have always been dreaming about. So now that he is back, like I would say, look, if there are reasonable places that make sense that Anakin Skywalker fits into storyline wise, I would absolutely love to see more Hayden Christensen reprise this role, if at all possible, if it makes sense. You know what I'm saying? Don't just shoehorn him in there. Let me ask you a question before we go any further. Speaking of Hayden Christensen, we have a ton of different eras when it comes to Star Wars for us to still explore. Do you think that there's more content out there for something revolving around Anakin Skywalker or him popping up again at all?
To your point, if the story requires it, then yes. We got word, for example, that there's the Lando series coming at some point. So maybe that could be a place where we see Anakin show up. I mean, clearly he would be, depending on where they are in the timeline, it would be Darth Vader. So, but maybe there. I guess it really depends on if they decide to go. Well, of course, with Andor, it will be season 2. So I guess as far as the Empire period, he would have to be Vader. But if they were to go back and flesh out some more stories from the Clone War period in the Old Republic, then maybe. But again, as far as some of the new shows, in the New Republic period, I mean, we still have Skeleton Crew, which is already in the can. With Filoni's movie coming up, if Ahsoka, assume it survives this season, there's no reason to think not. Or if they have a second season of Ahsoka, maybe there is if there's a story reason for him to come back. And the scene that I would really love to see him come back would be a situation where Anakin who is now, Force Ghost Anakin talking with Luke.
Oh, yeah, that would be pretty cool.
That would be that, and especially as Luke is during this New Republic period is building the new Jedi Order before, of course, we know what happens, but that would be an awesome way of bringing Anakin back into the fold, especially now that he's clearly the chosen one. The lessons we learned here, as far as the balance that he was teaching Ahsoka in this episode, and maybe helping Luke realize that as Luke establishes the new Jedi Order.
Yeah, I do love that placement. If he was going to come back, I think that's one of the bucket list things I would definitely have. I
Mhm.
would certainly love to see Hayden as Anakin speaking with Luke Skywalker as a Force ghost would be up there for me. And I know I feel like on social media, I feel like there might be some pushback in regards to this, but I am one of those believers in. Uh, I know he's. I know it's probably don't touch this character, but
Mhm.
I would be open to a Darth Vader series.
Mm.
And the only reason why I say that is Marvel Comics. I believe it's Charles Soule. I
Yeah.
believe is the author's name. He did an amazing run on Darth Vader. I think there's a
Yep.
ton of great stories you can tackle. There's even a I don't know if you read Star Wars novels, but I believe there's a book called Lords of the Sith
Mhm.
that deal with Darth Vader and him coming up under Palpatine and just seeing those two interactions and the training and just everything that goes into Palpatine sort of breaking him down even further as he still kind of struggles in between the Anakin Skywalker and Darth Vader side of himself. I think there's something really interesting in that. But again, that is something that feels very break glass in case of
Yeah.
emergency sort of thing, right?
Yeah.
Because
Yeah.
after what happened with Solo, the revisiting of past characters, especially somebody as beloved as Darth Vader, that's probably a really touchy
Yeah.
place to go. But it's something I would certainly be open to. But I think if anything, the Luke and Anakin stuff might come up first before anything else. I will say too, this episode for me really made me not that I didn't appreciate the Clone Wars, but it made me appreciate the Clone Wars even
Mhm.
more, getting the opportunity to actually see it sort of like in live action,
Yeah.
bringing us back. And I don't even, I don't, I'm not too familiar with the actress that played young Ahsoka in here, but I was not expecting a young Ahsoka or even revisiting the Clone Wars at all. But the fact that he gave it to us, I think for me, some of the takeaways from just seeing this again, as much as I've watched the Clone Wars, for me, this felt very much like a realization of, yeah, she really was a child soldier,
Yeah. Yes.
somebody that didn't ask for this, that clearly was brought up thinking that she was going to be a part of something else in regards to a keeper of the peace. And I love how Anakin kind of points out, like, look, under Obi-Wan, that's what my training was meant to be, was a keeper of the peace. But times change, and now we find ourselves kind of in the middle, smack dab in this war, and now you got to be a soldier. And I think for me that really hit home, especially the way that they showcase it with all the stormtroopers and things like that, the clone troopers running past, the explosions, the
Yeah.
fallen soldiers and fallen ships and stuff, and you're just looking around at all this war and destruction, and you're just thinking like, man, if this is not what they intended a Jedi to certainly be, but you can see how, especially being a child, being surrounded by that, how that would scar somebody like Ahsoka in regards to
Yeah.
just how she grows up, her mentality, and how she even trains sort of her own apprentice. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah. I think her name is Anna Greenblatt, I think. And
She was she was
she was
also Gamora, right?
Gamora. Yep. And also, if you saw Barbie, she was America Ferrera's daughter in Barbie.
Oh, okay,
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah. Yeah, and but you're right. It's one thing to see Ahsoka whenever in animation form, but you're spot on with the fact that seeing her in live action really drove home the point, and I think it really added the emotional depth to the episode. Seeing her in live action and really understanding that she really is just a kid whenever she was learning how to be a soldier in the Clone Wars.
Yeah, it's pretty startling, and I think they really I agree with you. I think they really did bring that home, and again, maybe even appreciate just that time period a little bit more when it comes to the Clone Wars. A couple other things in here. We did talk a little bit about the incredible cinematography and just the
Yeah.
shot selections that we got. I'll pull up some of these. I mean, just
Oh,
the going back and forth between the
yeah.
Anakin and then the Darth Vader silhouette real quick. And then they did it again a second time when she got
Yeah.
kicked back into the world between worlds as we see Anakin approaching,
Mhm.
only for it to flicker out to Darth Vader again and then back sort of thing. I mean, the visuals were just on point, man.
Yeah.
And I agree with you. If there's anybody that certainly deserved to do this episode, it was definitely Dave Filoni, and you can see why in that for sure.
Yeah, yeah, that visual, and one of the things on even on our review, that when Sarah and I were talking about this episode with in the world between worlds, and really setting things up, was the lightsaber battles here, and one of the things that really, not only Hayden Christensen is clearly, I think I saw it read somewhere on a Twitter or something where he was like, yeah, occasionally he still picks up, stick in like practices also, you know, but the thing that this episode really brought home, and I wasn't a big fan as episode 4 as the rest of the internet was. And if you and but and in particular, my wife and I were even joking. We were like, the lightsaber battles were like, meh. And I got a lot of flack. I even tweeted that, about episode 4. Was like, well, yeah, lightsabers, meh. But what makes great lightsaber battles in Star Wars is the emotions behind it, and that was really
Mm.
was present in this episode. Why it had such weight, and when you think about Obi-Wan and Anakin when they were on Mustafar, later in even in Obi-Wan the series, and
Ah,
uh,
yes.
yeah, and Luke and Vader, and both in Empire and in Return of the Jedi, it's the emotion behind it, and that was present here in this episode. So not only the physical aspects of it, but the emotional stakes behind it was what really set this episode apart from just like, meh, lightsaber battle to something more. Because yeah, it was that, it was the physical manifestation of what both of them were feeling, when he gave her the choice there at the very beginning of the episode, live or die. So,
Yeah, no, I totally agree with you. I will say episode 4 for me, I actually really dig the lightsaber battles.
mhm,
But to each their own. I totally what you mean though. A lot of it does have to come with just the storylines and the emotions that are certainly behind it. I thought
yeah,
if anything, the Balin and Ahsoka
yeah,
one
that's
was
yeah,
pretty impressive to me.
yeah, yeah,
Um, I think if anything, I really like the mood at least
mhm,
in which we had the Sabine and Shin, just because it was in the forest sort of thing. This is
yeah,
like their second battle between apprentices sort of thing. I kind of enjoyed certainly enjoyed that a little bit. But
yeah,
I would agree with you. I think the choreography in here was just off the charts.
yeah,
I am curious as to what it was like for Rosario Dawson to go face to face against Hayden Christensen, considering how big of a fan that she is. I would love to
mhm,
I would love to see her speak a little bit more about training with him for these lightsaber sort of sequences. Um, Let me see. A couple other things about this episode I was a big fan of. Little honorable mention: the Senator Organa name
oh
drop.
yeah, yeah,
I thought that was actually pretty cool
that
in the sense of like letting us know that she's still like, even though she's a senator, she's
mhm,
still helping out the rebels in a sense. You know what I
yeah,
mean? Like the
yeah,
fact that she's trying to stall for Hera to kind of get some, trying to help Ahsoka out and things like that. So I'm glad that Organa is still is connected to all the little moving pieces that maybe the Senate isn't necessarily aware of. I'm a big fan of that.
totally, totally. Whenever on our show we were talking about that very thing, and not have, how, given the time period that we're in, we are in a new republic, and how it's like in the Marvel movies, like, where are the Avengers? I need a line just to like reference why we haven't seen Han and Leia and Luke,
Mhm.
and people show up, and I got that this week. So, and it was, as you said, it was perfect in context to Leia being Leia, and so I really thought that was a highlight moment for that for the legacy characters.
And shout out real quick to the music composer, Kevin. What was his name? Kevin Kiner.
Kevin Kiner, yeah.
Uh, he I guess I didn't realize he did a lot of the music for
Mhm.
the Clone Wars and Rebels,
Yeah. Mhm.
and a couple other things too. And I gotta say, man, he's blowing me away.
Yeah.
This series, there's um outside of John Williams, who's got to be like 157 right now. I don't know how old he is, but like if there
Yeah.
is anybody that I think captures the moments of Star Wars extremely well, and that I would personally love to see kind of take over full time, Kevin Kiner is definitely up there, man. I feel like
Yeah.
if people do have any issues with maybe the Ahsoka series, I can guarantee you the music is not it. I think if anything, it
Yeah.
has helped carry and
Yeah.
elevate this series that much more. I'm a big fan of his work.
Completely agree. Completely agree. I mean, no disrespect to Ludwig with Mandalorian,
Great theme for Mandalorian, absolutely, yeah.
but yeah, Kevin, I think what's really cool here is how, and he did this in the animated series as well, is blending, having his own original score for these shows, but then using the legacy music at the
Yes.
right moments. Because that was, hearing like when Jason was able
Yes.
to like hear, feel the force whenever he sensed Ahsoka. What and I would like to hear your take on this. As far as, do you think she was physically still on the planet, or was she in the world between worlds? I mean, because I know there's a lot of back and forth out there as far as, was this all this in her head, or was she really in the world between worlds?
I kind of feel this was all in her head.
Mm, okay.
Um, because her body pops back up in the ocean again, she kind of awakens. I didn't really see any portals or doorways
Right.
when we see the world between worlds. I was trying to figure out who Anakin is, but I feel like I don't think that's like a actual physical embodiment of him. I don't even necessarily like it's one of those things where it's like it's either a memory of her, a memory of him, and it's just very because she's force sensitive, it's just very physical,
Mhm.
or like is that where like the force ghosts all go? Do they do they all go
Yeah.
to the world between worlds and like this
Yeah.
is the force
And
ghost version of Anakin, but like Ahsoka actually being there, sort of thing? I have no idea, but I'm under the impression that it was
yeah.
the more I
Huh.
see it, I think it's more in her head, but I could be wrong.
Yeah, I think it's really into interpretation. I mean, I
I
read
think
the
so.
scene, and I don't think there's a right or wrong answer. I mean, I think Filoni intentionally left it vague, because he loves to go into the mysticism of the
It
Force
does.
anyway, and
Yeah,
so I felt that she was physically in the world between worlds, in some level of it, and I think that planet might have been a portal, given that the Purgle,
could be.
clearly uses that as a link between the two galaxies and stuff. But again, I've been like sort of informally taking polls of people, like, what are your thoughts? But at the end of the day, I think Filoni intentionally left it vague so he could just,
Yeah, I think that you gotta leave
yeah,
something vague for Star Wars, right? You
yeah,
gotta keep
yeah,
some of the mysticism, there for sure. I totally agree with you.
yeah.
Um, Let me see. I do wanna get to just a couple cons real quick because I
Mhm.
know it as much as I absolutely love this episode, I do have some issues with it, and I am kinda curious to know your take.
Sure.
I've really appreciated the Purgles. I
Mhm.
think they look great in live action. I'm surprised as to how much I've actually enjoyed them. But I'm not gonna lie, Will. I don't know why this just feels so laughable to me. Like this just feels a
Mhm.
little too over the top for me. Not to say that when it comes to Star Wars, we haven't had ships inside of giant alien mouths before. We definitely have, but I don't know. It's just something about the plan. Just didn't seem like it was logical enough to me. But I guess look, Ahsoka's like, hey, I have no idea where they're going. They're
Yeah.
just gonna take us wherever, sort of thing. It's just one of those things where it's like a scene that I think works really well in animation,
Mm.
but I don't know if it's believable to me when it comes into sort of live action, if that makes any sense, right? Like the translation from animation to live action. I don't know
Yeah.
if the scene works the same for me. I kind of chuckled and laughed and rolled my eyes a little bit when I saw this scene, but maybe I'm tripping. How did you feel about the Purgle scene?
So I
Did it work for
it
you?
didn't it worked for me.
Okay.
And maybe I think it for and it, for me, I just sort of sat back and tried not to be overly nitpicky with this one
I
this week.
get you. I get you. Like, that's
I
what I said. I
mean,
felt like if I had to find any
yeah,
cons, because I was a big fan of this episode.
yeah,
That was probably like one of the few cons that I had.
yeah, I think I was for me, and I totally get that. I totally get that. I think I with getting when I was watching the episode, and we went after, and when I rewatched it, it still didn't bother me. It was more just a point of like, I guess since she had been through all of what she'd been through, and but going from, I guess, I think everybody's dubbed the Ahsoka the Gray to Ahsoka the White. I think is now what everybody's calling it now. She's Gandalf, but uh,
I love the
but
costume though.
yeah, yeah. Ev- the transition, because even when we were watching it, it was one of those things like the lighting, everything about it's brighter now,
Hmm.
and so I was really more caught up in the mood, and so I was maybe a little bit more forgiving of the translation from animation to live action, because overall I think they've really done when we first saw the Purgle and in hyperspace and Mando season 3, I've felt that they've done a good job of translating them. So, you know, freely will admit I used the Homelander meme the night after I watched the episode of perfect. Uh, Perfect. Down to the everything down to the last detail. Perfect. So and maybe I'm swinging the other way because I was so nitpicky on episode 4 that now I'm like super fanboying on episode 5. I will freely admit that.
No, I get you. Yeah, because I personally have really enjoyed how he's utilized the Purgles. I mean, it makes
Yeah.
perfect sense for them to be there, especially with all the hyperspace lane, especially
Mhm.
the big hyperspace lane to the other galaxy. So I totally get the reasoning why they're there. For some, it just made me chuckle a little bit for sure.
Yeah.
How have you felt about the dialogue in this show?
Mhm.
I see a lot of comparisons to that of like Andor, and look, and I get the
Yeah.
comparisons to Andor just because it's like, I mean, Andor just had just really meaty dialogue,
Yeah.
like, I mean, it was just like top tier stuff. When it comes to Ahsoka, um, I think I had some of my issues with maybe the first and second episode of its dialogue, just because it
Mhm.
feels very I don't know, it feels like it's written for animation in the sense of
Yeah.
like just very surface level stuff, not really
Mhm.
digging deep into it. But I do think that there are times when it works.
Yeah.
And I think especially in this episode, if there were any pushback for people when it comes to dialogue, I think it definitely does work, because I do think that even though some of the stuff could be short and sweet,
Mhm.
it hits and it's
Yeah.
meaningful in everything that they kind of say. So in that sense, I really didn't have too many issues with it.
Yeah. I mean, I joked on our show. I used the high school analogy of Andor is like
Yes.
AP,
Yeah, yeah.
and Ahsoka is like honors class. Uh, because I think the dialogue, Andor is in another class of itself as far as Star Wars.
And
I-
just to clarify, Ahsoka doesn't need to be Andor dialogue.
Exactly,
Right.
exactly. Um, but as this series has progressed, and especially because to your point about the dialogue, and of course, there's early on in the series, and a lot of other criticism that people had was Rosario Dawson's portrayal of Ahsoka, because everyone is so used to seeing Ahsoka as this light, a light, what
Mhm.
we're familiar with from the animation show. But now that we are halfway through and we've seen why we've seen the, I guess, going through the crucible and uh, finally addressing those fears that she had all the issues with Anakin, and the fact that she left the order. And if she had stayed, would all of this stuff would have happened? Would Anakin would he have fallen? And all that kind of stuff. So now looking at it as we get in more context, it was true. It was as a writing choice, and it was a directing choice, and a performance choice for her to be restrained, and it gives more context to things like when we saw her. in Book of Boba Fett, well, and why she was resistant to
To train
teaching
Grogu.
Grogu.
Hmm.
Exactly. So, because so it's all making sense now. And so then now that so, and to your point about the Purgle, at the end of the episode, now she's just like she's free and she's
Hmm.
balanced. And she talked about that balance early, with Sabine too. She could teach the lesson, but she didn't believe the lesson,
Believe the lesson, right?
but now she does. So,
Yeah, and I think, especially because episode one, I think I was really harsh on some of the performances. And
mm,
again, I think it was maybe I pointed out maybe it being Dave Filoni's directing work. Having a hard time really. I'm curious how many takes he takes of certain
mhm,
scenes. Are you taking the best ones? How are you coaching up your actors and things like that? But I do think you make a good point. Like that also could just be how the character itself is written based off of where she's at in her life and the struggles that she has, and like she's like I think she's like 40 something years old in
yeah,
this too.
yeah,
Right? Like so
yeah,
she's not little kid rebel anymore, or
yeah,
Attack of the Clones or Clone Wars girl anymore. So
yeah,
she definitely is certainly changed over the years. And I think Rosario's casting was perfect for this.
mhm,
Because I think she's doing a marvelous job as Ahsoka, honestly. But let's talk a little bit more about the Ahsoka and Anakin stuff in here
yeah,
because he says just in a couple of my notes, it says, I put in some quotations or some of the quotes that we had in here. When Anakin says, when Obi-Wan trained me, we were keepers of the peace. Now to
mhm,
win a war, I must teach you to be a soldier. You got to adjust to the times. Um, and I put as certainly this wasn't what she signed up for, and she doesn't want to be defined by death and destruction and fighting all the time. And I thought she took away some really great sort of life lessons in here, and I think it's certainly a lot of that fear of, as he puts it in here. He's like, I'm teaching you how to lead, I'm teaching you how to fight, and if you stop, you'll die. And I think he
mhm,
even mentioned something like all of me is in you, like all my knowledge you certainly have. And so I do think that there's certainly a weight that Ahsoka has been
yeah,
carrying on her shoulders with fears of like, am I gonna be you one day? Maybe is this what my future kind of holds? Whether maybe when it comes down to his choice of live or die, I absolutely love this moment that she has here, where she's like thinking to herself and getting the opportunity to tease maybe a little bit of a dark side of Ahsoka here, but she clearly chooses the option to live,
mhm,
and probably releases a lot of that burden off of herself. But I love being able to have seen what her struggle was this entire time of the idea of like my master clearly taught me how to be a soldier. And I
yeah,
think she's also looking back on how she's maybe treated Sabine, and the
mhm,
idea of like, if this is a legacy that's kind of passing down and it's passed down to me, what am I now passing on to my apprentice? And the fact that she realizes like, that's not what I want from myself. I've
yeah,
never wanted a
yeah.
life to just be a soldier. And so the fact that she's now facing that reality and making some choices for herself, I think was a great lesson for her in here.
Oh, totally, totally. And I think that's why this episode really just stood out for me. It was really just seeing that, you know, again, it was all the setup that we had in those early episodes. And then whenever they had that critical moment there, whenever, after the siege of Mandalore and he kicks her back to the world
Mhm.
between worlds. And for that second, she could have easily gone down the dark path. And we see in her eyes and stuff. And but she just like Luke, whenever he had a similar type of trial, as far as, it wasn't to kill Vader, it was to confront Vader. And in her place, it was to confront her feelings, as you noted, of everything. So, whenever she got Anakin's sword and tossed it away, she's like, "No,
This,
I'm picking a new path."
yeah, this feels very much like people that say, I don't want to be like my parents,
Hmm.
like, or
Yeah,
sometimes we feel like we're destined to follow in like our
hmm,
parents' footsteps, sort of thing. And it's the
yeah,
idea that we can make our own destiny and our own future. And to
yeah,
me, honestly, was stepping away and seeing Ahsoka the way that she is now in the all white and stuff,
Mhm.
people, like you said, people will call her, gray Ahsoka, white Ahsoka, whatever. But this feels like almost she's now become sort of like a Jedi master.
Yeah.
Like now that she's like
Yeah.
this was like her final trial. She literally spent all these years
Mhm.
sort of not being able to confront the one thing that's been burdening
Yeah.
her. And now
Yeah.
that she's gotten it off her chest, it feels very much like she's elevated to sort of that master level now.
Oh, yeah, yeah, especially given that she left the order.
Right.
Uh, and so you're right. Yeah. So she's been feeling all this, the Anakin stuff, the fact that, I'm glad they really, I didn't really think about it until they really framed it in this episode, that really during Anakin's period of being one of the greatest Jedi, and they talk about this, he was, Obi-Wan taught him to be a peacekeeper, but then, due to the manipulations of Palpatine behind the scenes, the Jedi basically played into their hand, and instead of trusting the Force, they trusted the government, and that led to their downfall.
Yeah, because they were. I think Obi-Wan was even pushing back against the idea of like, I don't even know if we should even be doing this type of stuff.
Yeah.
Like how far should we really be taking us into battles when
Mhm.
this isn't really what we ever signed up for? So I totally agree. I think it shows you a perfect example of the downfall and the mishaps of the Jedi during that time period, and the fact that Ahsoka is part of that. Part of those casualties of what she learned during her time there and what she wind up sort of carrying over, sort of thing. So and I think if anything, especially after going through that and then coming back to reality, only to come to find out that your apprentice has now gone off with somebody else willingly.
Yeah.
I think Rosario did an incredible
Mhm.
performance in here of just
Mhm.
showcasing the emotions as she's going through the memories and stuff. And once she gets to that point, you can just see that. I
Yeah.
think there's a bit of clearly being upset that Sabine went down that path, but I
Yeah.
got to think she probably feels some sense of failure as well as a master. What do you think though from that moment?
Yeah, she really played that scene well, because there's so many things that seemed to be conveyed in that moment. One,
Absolutely.
you know, does she tell Hera? Because,
Mm,
she knows the truth, and how much it's one of those things like, okay, do I tell a member of the family that, our the person that, one of our kin is like gone off willingly to bring back the evil threat that is Thrawn.
mhm.
And so, so you had that into the, I think her coming to grips with like, oh, I failed Sabine, um, early, before I went through all this, in the training. Now I think maybe it is the realization, like, yeah, I messed up, and so I've got to fix this.
Yeah,
Um,
I'll be interested to see
yeah,
when they do connect again, how Ahsoka is going to approach her. Because I don't necessarily know if Sabine's like if she's fully turned, but I
no,
definitely do think it's definitely one of those things where the dark side has definitely convinced her or like put something out there like, here's Ezra. Do you want to find Ezra? Come with
yeah,
me, sort of thing, like just that
yeah,
temptation. So
yeah.
I will be interested to see how Ahsoka takes the lessons that she's learned and hopefully convinces Sabine to kind of stand by her side again and trust her again. So
Yeah,
I don't think Sabine will touch the dark side. I think they'll
I don't
probably
either.
I think they'll tease, just the conflict between the two of them. But I think with the lessons Ahsoka has learned, I think there'll be some redemption here for sure.
Oh, yeah, I agree. I don't. I do not see Sabine going down the dark path. And uh, I think it was. I think it's, Huey made a great point. Don't get separated. And
Yeah,
that
I was a
moment.
great. Yeah, I'm
Yeah,
sorry. Go ahead. Go ahead, Will.
yeah. No, I'm glad you switched to the visual here with the helmet. Just speaking of it again, the work David Tennant's been doing in this series, just with the
He's like my
emotion.
favorite character.
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
Yeah, he's turned into my favorite character, which is super surprising. Then again, I love Star Wars robots, but
hmm,
David Tennant, I love him in anything, and he's really
yeah,
bringing a level to Hugh Yang that I did not expect.
yeah,
It's just been flooring me. But this scene alone, like, just set the vibe for this whole
Mhm.
entire episode. Like, you just
It did.
knew it was going to be heavy, the way
Mhm.
that he's just grieving over the idea. Like, I told them to stick together and they
Yep.
never listened to me. And I'm like, man, this is going to be a deep episode.
Yeah, yeah, it totally was, but it's totally set the tone. And all speaking of Star Wars droids, here I was thinking that, oh, we're getting Chopper in live action, and, and seeing the homicidal maniac Chopper, like, taking out taking out all these potential, like, Imperial remnants, but no, he has been like the MVP, I think,
Yeah.
to date, as far as with the series so far, as far as the supporting characters.
I totally agree. And quick honorable mention: we got a Rex sighting in this
Yes.
episode. Dave Filoni really pulling out everything out of the bag here. He's like, "Oh, that's right, you guys wanted to see this? Here you
Yep.
go."
Practical, yeah, practical armor too. Wasn't no digital rendering here. It was all. I just really appreciated that the level of detail. I saw someone in the chat saying the Homelander memes, is becoming annoying, but they're
Perfection.
perfection. I'm sorry. So you can. I just love the boys and Homelander in particular, as far as that show. Not to cross the streams as far as show topics,
No, you're good.
the seeing Rex, and the different faces of Rex's armor too. I mean, that's, that
Oh, that's
level of
true. Yeah.
detail. That was just such level of detail in this. I mean, in all these shows there have been, but I mean,
Even
I
like the Siege
did
of
you get the
Mandalore flashback
yes.
when they got the troopers with the mall.
The mall, yes,
Yeah,
yes. Were you able to go see it? I know you said you were going to try to see it
I
theatrically.
didn't, man.
Oh,
I got a pass, but
yeah.
when I read it, it was like first come, first serve.
Okay.
And I get off of work at 6 o'clock and it starts at 7, and I'm like 45 minutes away. And I'm
Okay.
like,
Okay.
there's no way I'm gonna get a seat. So I
Oh,
unfortunately didn't get a
bummer.
chance to go. But
Bummer.
after seeing this episode, I was so jealous I didn't
Yeah.
get the opportunity
I
to, because
Yeah.
breathtaking visually, man.
Yeah, yeah, and it was and even when Sarah and I were talking about it, we were like, it was cinematic. I mean,
It
this
was
episode
totally.
was really shot to be it was shot to be shown on a big screen. Um,
It absolutely was. I totally
yeah.
agree with you. So I am a little bit bummed that I didn't get a chance to see it. And then last but not least, I do want to just tackle the Syndulas real quick.
Yeah. Mhm.
Because I will tell you, man, I didn't necessarily care for Mary Elizabeth Winstead as Hera the first episode or two.
Yeah.
But man, she is really coming into form. I've loved seeing her working alongside the X-wing pilots, even her
Mhm.
son and Chopper. Something about her, I guess, getting into the action is really like the fact that they have her doing more than just sitting around and
Mhm.
talking type of thing has really helped. And I also think as they're progressing through this series and filming, they're probably also getting more comfortable in their roles as these characters. But I've been absolutely loving Mary Elizabeth Winstead as Hera over the past like 3 or 4 episodes. Honestly, she's just got this great cavalier spirit about her. The idea, especially that we find that she didn't even ask for permission to come on
Yeah.
this particular mission, I thought was great as they're trying to hold off the New Republic. But we do get the opportunity here where she might get suspended in her
Yeah.
role here. So it does kind of open up the idea of like where would Hera go from here, sort of thing. How have you liked Mary Elizabeth Winstead as Hera?
Yeah. She did it did have to grow on me some, because Vanessa Marshall was just so iconic with that voice work that she did in Rebels and all. But I think there've been like to your point, there has been a lot of exposition dumps with her, but
Mhm.
they've all been critical, like, story points. Like, thinking back to earlier in the season, with whenever she first was talking to the senators and trying to convince them
Convince
to,
them.
yeah, and then again. And so, she she yes, she has a lot of exposition, but I feel that whenever she does say certain things, like the "May the Force be with you," for example, she nails it.
Mhm.
That was a very good moment, and so she has really grown on me. I mean, I still think, it's hard. I don't want to compare the animated versus the live action. I think, I will, as far as the Rebels version of her. I think, yeah, I mean, I think I will always have a sort of bias towards that version, but I think overall she's done a good job of translating her
Yeah, I
to
think one of the things I
live
said
action.
was I think one of the things I said was while I like Mary Elizabeth Winstead as an actress, I don't know if she would have been my first choice.
Hmm.
But she is growing on me in the role for sure. And I think you're right. Like her being able to handle the Jason situation and then
Yeah.
also juggling the X-Wing people, like we really gotta go. We gotta give them an answer, sort of thing. I really enjoyed how she kind of took charge of that moment, especially
Hmm.
believing in her son. And like, no,
Yeah.
he's got something here. We need to kind of follow along with this. And even getting the opportunity to see her interact with Hugh Yang a little
Yeah.
bit was cool because we've always seen Hugh Yang with like, Ahsoka or
Hmm.
Sabine. So it was kind of cool to kind of see them together. And I especially love the line where Hera's like, "So what was Ahsoka's master like?" And Hu Yang
Yeah.
just looks at him is like, intense. It's like, yeah,
Yeah.
that's a perfect word for him.
Yeah.
But I appreciated Hera in here. And look, Jason tapping into the force to hear the lightsaber battle between Ahsoka and
Hmm.
Anakin in here. I guess maybe even utilizing some of his ability to maybe even let his mom in on the action and kind of
Yeah.
pick up on the lightsaber waves also. It does make me beg the question then, does Homeboy get some training finally? If not from Ahsoka, then from Luke. I am kind of curious as to why they
Yeah.
have not pursued his Jedi training. But I guess
Yeah.
in turn, when you look at how things went with Ahsoka and Sabine, I don't think Hera's quick to ask Ahsoka, "Can you train my
Yeah.
son?" So maybe it's just kind of very much been in limbo. But I do wonder if he becomes part of an order somewhere down the line.
Yeah. So I have a couple thoughts on this. To your point, love another name drop that I was like waiting for was to hear Kanan's name,
Oh yes.
and finally got it. We've had talking around it, but we've seen the this arm shield, so armor stuff on Jason, but we finally got the name drop, and I was pointing at the screen celebrating, and I was like, yes, finally, even though Freddie Prinze will probably never come back to Star Wars, but but yeah, so there was that. But to the longer point that you were making as far as his future, and I kind of like uh, I'm worried for Jason because we know if he goes to get training and if he goes to Luke's school, I mean, will he be around when Ben, goes
Mm,
Kylo?
mhm.
So is it a sad future? Will he, or will he end up like Ezra, where we sort of push him off to a pocket
Ah,
dimension or another galaxy? Hopefully that'll be the good story, so that when Ray comes back in the future movies, whenever the strike ends, and hopefully that can does finally happen, because I feel like Lucasfilm has been promising us these projects, but nothing, at least on the film side, it's just they've all been falling apart.
mhm,
But assuming that the Ray film does happen, and my understanding is I think it is her helping to establish a new order.
mhm.
Hopefully, we'll have a happy ending with Jason, and he just sort of went somewhere
Somewhere else.
and come, and he wasn't there when Kylo killed everybody at Luke's Jedi Temple.
Yeah, I mean, I guess if based off of the time period, I don't even know how old Jason is right here, but
So
if we're talking like sequel trilogy, I gotta assume Homeboy's like at least in his 30s by then, right?
yeah. Well, yeah, because let's see, he looks to be so. Let's see, Rebels happened he was born right around. So when do we see
I don't think that's
in
very
the
far
Rebels?
out from A New Hope, the finale
Right,
at least.
yeah, because yeah, so I guess he was what, probably one or two at the end of Rebels. Because with New
Yeah,
Hope, I think Rebels like literally was like right only a few months before the Battle of Yap.
and I think this series is like 3 to 5 years after Return of the Jedi or so,
It's
or maybe
it's
5 years.
I think I want to say it's 11 years, because it's
Oh, real
after,
okay.
yeah, because it's after Mando season 2. I think if I recall, it's like Book of Boba Fett season. So so Book of Boba Fett was like Mandalorian 2.5, and
Mhm.
so that was about around 9 to 11 years after Endor. So
Oh,
so he's
okay. Okay.
yeah, yeah. So it's not quite we're not quite at Mandalorian season 3 yet.
Gotcha. So yeah, no, that definitely helps with the timeline.
Yeah. So
Yeah, so
because
yeah, maybe Jason is alive.
yeah, so he could be in his late 30s, early 40s, and because this because Force Awakens is what 30 years after this period.
Mhm.
So yeah, yeah. I'm hoping for a happy story because
I hope
especially
so, man.
yeah,
Yeah, I consider the fact that I don't even know if we expected him to even be in this series.
yeah,
But
yeah.
the fact that he is, I'm glad that they've been utilizing him the way that they have,
Hmm.
been teasing his connection with the Force. And I definitely have some questions. Like, does he know? I would assume he knows all about his dad and
Yeah,
adventures and stuff. I don't know how much Hera has told him, but he's definitely very much Force sensitive. So we'll see what his
yeah.
future definitely holds. But
Yeah, I
great
know some
episode.
yeah, I know some Eagle Eye. I don't know if I saw it on Screen Rant or somewhere someone noted that there is a photo of Kanan on
On
the
the dash,
dashboard.
right?
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah. And I've been
I
like,
did
I
see
went
that.
back. Yeah, so I've been trying to see it. I need to like maybe get closer to my screen or some of my old eyes here. Uh,
Yeah, I think I just saw somebody post a picture
yeah,
of the picture on the dashboard. I hadn't seen it myself personally, but yeah.
yeah, yeah. So I think again they've been talking around Kanan, and maybe the remaining 3 episodes that we have will when we go back because I think probably what'll happen is Hera stays there so and with the Rebel fleet, so well the New Republic fleet I should say. So some point this theory spiraling here. Yeah, Thrawn's coming back, and there's going to be a big space battle over Cetos. So maybe we'll get some name drops for Kanan there.
Yeah, I am curious how the next 3 episodes will go, with them probably finding Thrawn for sure. We got 3 episodes left. Are we gonna see Ezra? I'm sure we'll probably learn the fate of Ezra for sure.
Yeah.
And I'm kind of curious if they are gonna cut and go back and forth because in this episode we didn't get any Balin, we didn't get any
Yeah.
Sabine or Morgan or anything like that. So I do wonder if next week's episode will be a focus on them,
Hmm.
and maybe Ahsoka arriving during that time.
Hmm.
But I do wonder when we're going to see Hera and the rest of the New Republic gang again. But yeah, man, I'm excited for it. But this episode blew me away, man.
Oh, it did.
I can see why they wanted to release this, especially in movie theaters.
Yeah.
And I think this just again continues to not only show the improvement in Dave Filoni, but just to if there was any hype level for his upcoming movie, I think it just skyrocketed
Oh
again.
yeah. Oh yeah.
Because I think he can really bring it to the big screen for sure.
Oh, totally agree. I think we still have the skeleton crew as far as the shows still that need to happen here and
Mm.
the New Republic period. So how much of and I don't know where Skeleton Crew falls in line with the rest of these shows as far as the timeline, but we are all building uh to that film, and that it could be a bittersweet film, in a sense that maybe they will finally defeat Thrawn, but of course that may lead to the remnants of the Imperials, executing the First Order and stuff. They follow some of this. He has been leading. Seems that Filoni has been leaning into some of the stuff from the legends from the books. Uh, so yeah, I mean, we could theory spiral like crazy as far as,
Yeah, that's true. That's
but I'm
true.
not. But I will not do the Mephisto of Marok.
Yeah, man, that went on forever, man. That went on forever. I mean, I kid you not. Even on here, I mean, we went through like 3 or 4 different Marvel series. Like each
Yeah,
series is like Mephisto's in here. Like, no, guys, we got to stop this. We got to stop
yeah,
this.
yeah,
Couple things real quick from Marcelino. I wanted to bring up some of his comments. I doubt he'll return in Andor. I guess talking about maybe Anakin. Oh, I
yeah.
don't
We
know.
were
He said
talking earlier about yeah.
Tony Gilroy wants to be independent from the Star Wars universe, with the only character she created being involved. Yeah, Tony Gilroy very much is wanting to not have as many Star Wars isms in Andor, and it definitely benefits the show, if you ask
Yeah,
me.
yeah,
I'm glad that we have Tony
yeah,
guiding that ship. I mean, and I think it even was nominated for a bunch of Emmys too, if I'm not
yeah.
mistaken, right?
It was, and they were I think they were almost finished filming it, and then I think the writer strike messed it up
Oh, for
first
season 2?
because for season 2, yeah.
Mm.
And I think they're still doing a lot of B roll because the British actors can act, but clearly since Gilroy is both showrunner and lead writer, even though he's directing the thing, he can't write. Uh, so hopefully the strike doesn't impact that show too much.
Yeah, I hope not. He also says, I think I would like for Anakin to return by finally finishing some of the unfinished Clone Wars arcs, such as the Utapau arc. Um, I will say this, and maybe not necessarily where I would like to see Anakin pop back up at, but the de-aging in this episode, if they did utilize, I gotta assume they utilized it. I don't know if they
Yeah,
did in this shots like this, but it really
looks good.
worked for me. I didn't really care for the de-aging shot at the end of episode 4.
Yeah.
I think it was maybe the lighting or something like his face just looked too makeup or like too smooth. I don't know. It was just artificial. It just
They,
looked weird to me.
they saved the budget for this one.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely, because I didn't find any fault. You might be right. Like the
Yeah,
the budget might have been towards this one, because I thought Anakin looked
yeah.
incredible in here. They did a remarkable job with him.
Yeah,
So,
but I joke about the budget, but I think that also I think why they use a lot of the fog and other things. Not only the fog of, I mean, I think the
absolutely.
symbolism, fog of war, but also I think to help with you know with the effects and that kind of stuff too. So I think it was multiple reasons there.
I totally agree with you. I do think a lot of the fog certainly helped. Let me see what else he said in here. Um Oh yeah, we just pull up the image, but he says it was great that we finally saw the Phase One Clone War armor in physical live action and not just CGI.
Yeah,
Yeah, I thought the costumes look great in here. And shout out to the actress that you said played her, Ariana Greenblatt. I thought she did a marvelous job, and I'm kind of curious to see where else she'll pop up in the future.
yeah, yeah,
Um, Marcin says they really put a huge emphasis on Ahsoka being a kid in war. I hope they touch on this more with Luke and Rey's Jedi Order. Yeah, maybe especially for Rey, based off of how she got introduced. It's like, hey, let's just plop you right into the middle of this first order war here.
yeah, yeah. I mean, I guess yeah, because I mean, Luke's order, I guess, is like during the rise of the First Order. So,
But
so
yeah,
yeah, yeah. So yeah, I mean, the Jedi being the peacekeepers really, unless they do it in the future period, I can't remember what they call Ray's period, but it will. Yeah, that's a good point. Teaching them to be peacekeepers again after so much conflict in the galaxy over during that time,
yeah, I would be
during this time
interested to see
period.
like when we come to Ray's movie, like how like is she now just building up the the new Jedi Order, or
Yeah,
have they been established for a little bit? Because it would be nice to kind of see just traditional Jedi again, kind of being taught those ways.
yeah,
Um, but yeah, she does have the Jedi books and things
mhm,
like that. So
yeah,
she definitely will be getting a lot of her educational material from there. So maybe not so much kids in war to
yeah,
start things off, but yeah, I do think at least when it comes to this episode, it really like we said at the top, it did bring home the fact of Ahsoka truly being a kid
mhm,
soldier and having
yeah,
to deal with all that death and destruction around her will certainly change a
yeah,
person for sure. All those years,
yeah,
so definitely
yeah.
answers a lot of questions.
And I think it impacted Balin too. I mean, because and I hope they pick up on some of that.
That's true too. You're absolutely right. I'm glad you wanted to bring that up. I mean, because who knows what Balin's path would have been. I mean, he not only got to experience war, but then after that, you don't have anybody there to
Yeah,
kind of take you out of that mindset or train you properly. So you're
yeah,
literally just a loner having to guide the
yeah,
universe by yourself with that mindset.
yeah. Because I mean, because he knew Anakin. I mean, and so from that time period, and it sounds and knows what happened to Anakin. So I'm really hoping that this series, because Balin, I know he wasn't in this episode, but but he's to your point. We were talking about lightsaber battles and stuff, but he's been that's my other MVP as far as this series, because rest in peace, Ray Stevenson, but
Mhm.
he's just brought another level to this show that I've been really appreciating.
Yeah, it's like just a gravitas, you know. It's
Yeah.
like he just
Hmm.
commands the screen when he's on
Yeah.
there. Yeah, he definitely fits that Sith Lord perfectly.
Yeah.
Even though, yeah, so we'll see, but we'll see how next week's goes. I think we got 3 more episodes left,
Yep.
if I'm not mistaken. But guys, remember, at the end of the day, these are just simply our A plus opinions. We want to know yours. What did you guys think about episode number 5? Leave your thoughts in the comment section box below, and we'll definitely continue to communicate and discuss this episode with you guys throughout the week until next week. But other than that, I think that's going to do it for us. Will, if people want to reach out to you on social media, where can they find you, sir?
Yeah. Well, first of all, Adam, thanks for having me. I really
Of
enjoyed
course, man.
talking this episode. I'm glad it worked out that we were able to geek out over this one.
Maybe we'll try and
Uh,
get together again for the finale.
yeah. Yeah. We can try to do that. Let's try to do that.
Okay.
You can find me at as far as Twitter or X or whatever you want to call it, at Will and Polk, WillMPolk. And you can find our show handles at Scene-N-Nerd on Twitter or X. We're also on Instagram. Of course, we have our YouTube channel, and we're also on Threads at Scene_N_Nerd. And of course, and Adam put our website in the chat as well, www.scenenerdpodcast.com. But Sarah and I release episodes every Thursday, and I also do some Star Trek reviews as well on my and I should be probably going to be recording a bundle about the first few episodes of the Lord next coming up probably next week or so.
Nice, nice. Well, definitely always looking forward to it, Will.
Yeah.
But guys, if you want to follow us on social media, right here at the bottom at A Plus Opinions, find us everywhere on social media if you want to. We're also on Threads. I believe we also have a TikTok at Hero Report, so go ahead and check us out there as well. And yeah, I'll go ahead and put a link in the description box below for ways to contact us as well. But until then, guys, that'll do it for us here. So we'll certainly see you guys next week. But until then, do us a big favor. Take care of yourselves, take care of each other, and keep it A plus. May the force be with you. We'll talk to you later. Bye.